Hi there, smart drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about crashes, how to avoid crashes, kind of a high-level historical overview of traffic crashes and why they're so dangerous. Well, kind of dangerous in this day and age anyway. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Stick around. We'll be right back with that information. Hi there, smart drivers. Welcome back. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about traffic crashes. And I realized as I was putting this together there in the hour before getting going here that one of the things, this is going to be a two-part series. And yeah, just bear with me here for 1 second. I'm just going to turn down the brightness here a little bit on the camera because I'm a little bit washed out here. So I'll just turn that down just a little bit. There we go. That should be better. Excellent. So welcome to the Smart Drive Test live stream here on Monday because it was a holiday weekend, Easter. Happy Easter to everybody, and wishing you all the best with you and your family and travels that you may have been on this weekend. Corey, the moderator, he's going to be a little bit late, but he's going to be here shortly. So yes, and so as I was saying, prior to getting this going, while I was putting the presentation together and those types of things, I realized that this is going to be a two-part series. This is going to be kind of the academic part of traffic crashes and kind of a historical overview. And then next week I'm going to do specifics on how to implement specific techniques and strategies that you can put in place to protect yourself and reduce traffic crashes. So Tommy is here from Oshawa. Jaden is here from Florida. And excellent, Jaden, you passed your permit test. That's really great. Congratulations on that. Yes. Happy Easter and Passover for everybody that's tuning here on the live stream. A few people here getting a bit late, but really good. And welcome to the live stream to Smart Drive Test. And yes, and we are quickly heading into spring. That's the reason for traffic crashes and those types of things, because summertime is the time when we have the most number of crashes. Now, some will argue that yes, there are more people driving on our roads than there are in the wintertime, and that is true. However, many people are of the false idea or the false notion that wintertime is when we have the most crashes, when in fact we don't. It's actually June, July, and August are the most number of crashes that we have. And actually in other countries where they don't get snow, they do actually have a high number of crashes. And the reason is because our risk perception is much lower. We don't think that we're going to have as much, the chances of being involved in a crash are much reduced. And I mean, we can talk about all of that with the presentation and those types of things. So we're just kind of getting started here. And for those of you just tuning in to the live stream here on Easter weekend, be sure to tell us where you're from in the world, where you're watching from, what class of license you're getting, what class of license you're working toward, whether it's car, truck, bus, motorcycle license. Some of you will be getting a motorcycle license here coming up in the summer and those types of things. So just let us know which class of license you're going for. And of course, after I get the presentation done, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have about driving, about air brakes, about CDL driving, preparing for your road test for CDL and passenger vehicle license, motorcycle license, answer all of those questions and help you to be successful as a driver working towards getting your license or being crash free for the remainder of your driving career. So quickly, I'm just gonna head over to the PowerPoint presentation. We'll do that, and then I'll come back and I'll answer any questions that you might have about driving, about getting a license, and those types of things. So just bear with me here. And of course, I'm not at the top. Okay, so today, transition the slide over there. We go. Okay, so PowerPoint presentation, car crashes. We're going to be talking about car crashes, and most of you probably have seen one or two YouTube videos on crash test dummies and car crashes, testing of cars for safety ratings and those types of things. And it's done there in the United States of America, and they've improved traffic safety incredibly. And in the 1960s, Ralph Nader, who was one of the presidential candidates in the United States in the last election, maybe the election before that, I can't remember which one, but anyway, he was a presidential candidate at one point, wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed, and he particularly took aim at the Chevrolet Corvair in the 1960s. and talked about how unsafe the vehicle was, and that vehicle occupants were dying in crashes at very low speeds, and pointed out that traffic safety was not an issue of automotive manufacturers, and automotive manufacturers argued that traffic safety would never sell, which they couldn't have been more wrong at the time, because probably 25 years later, into the 1980s, traffic safety, or not traffic safety, but vehicle safety and vehicle safety features were in fact selling automobiles at an incredible rate. And today, this is one of the first things that people look at when they're purchasing new vehicles, is the safety rating of that vehicle. Okay, I got a little technical problem here going on. Bear with me. There we go. So for those of you who may be new to Smart Drive Test, consider subscribing. My name is Rick August. I do have a PhD in legal history, particularly in policing. Through most of the 1990s, I was a truck driver and ran freight between Canada and the U.S., delivering mostly everything east of the Mississippi. Did a lot of delivery of freight into cities on the eastern seaboard: New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Florida. Florida's a state, not a city, but into Florida as well, into Miami and Tallahassee and those types of places. I drove buses for Greyhound while I was going to university in Australia, and that was a very interesting learning experience as well, especially after years of driving truck. 1997, I became a licensed commercial driving instructor, and I have an expertise in air brakes. And as I said, I have a doctorate in legal history, with my expertise in policing, oddly enough, as it relates to traffic. And this is a picture of me when I had hair in 2002 when I was driving buses for Greyhound. It's hard to believe that that's 18 years ago now. So most of what I'm going to talk about today in terms of the history of traffic crashes is based on an article that I wrote in 2006 called "Spinning Our Wheels: The Inability of Traffic Policy to Change Driver Behavior." And there's three ways that authorities try to reduce the number of traffic crashes and fatalities and injuries on our roadways. And basically it's through engineering, enforcement, and education. And it's the triangle of the three E's. So enforcement, we try to enforce traffic laws through policing. And then engineering, we try to make better roads, we try to make better cars. And then education, we educate the public. And again, in 2006, when I returned to Canada and started working at UBCO, they interviewed me, one of the newspapers here, about distracted driving. And now distracted driving has ballooned into this enormous problem that we now have on our roadways because of cellular telephones available in vehicles. And a few years ago, there was a study done by the AAA, the Automobile Association of America, which 66% of Americans admitted to using their phone while driving. Not a hands-free set, but a handheld set. And then 33% of those admitted to texting and driving. So distracted driving has become a huge problem. But you can see here in the upper right corner in this slide that even in 1923, distraction on the part of road users was still something that was happening, and the person inevitably died because they stepped out in front of a train. So you can have a look at this article, and if you look down in the description there, you'll find the link to this article, and you can have a bigger look at it. Interesting enough, in the last 120 years, at the beginning of the 20th century, war, famine, and disease were the big reasons why people died. 100 years later, terminal illness, suicide, and traffic crashes are now the main reasons for deaths amongst people in quote-unquote first world nations. And traffic crashes the number of traffic crashes that occur on our roadways has not been reduced. We still have the same number of traffic crashes. We still have the same number of injuries as we did 30, 40, 50 years ago. What we have reduced is the number of traffic fatalities. The number of people dying in traffic crashes is much, much less. And basically, I argued in that article that I just mentioned, Spinning Our Wheels, that the reason we've reduced traffic fatalities is not because people drive better and not because we've reduced the number of crashes. It's because of better engineering, better safety features in vehicles, better roadways, and better medical advances in medical science. So we understand how to get people to the hospitals more quickly, and how to treat trauma victims that have sustained tremendous injuries, and to keep them alive. So we're keeping people alive more. They're simply not dying in traffic crashes as they once were. And the other thing I'd like to say about traffic crashes is that no one is immune from traffic crashes. These are some of the few, just a few of the famous people who have died. Princess Diana, James Dean, Tim Horton. For those of you who are not Canadian, Tim Hortons is one of the biggest coffee shop chains in Canada, and for some of us who've come from the eastern provinces in Canada, Tim Hortons is sort of next to patriotism. And then, of course, the most recent famous death was Paul Walker, who was killed in a car crash just a few years ago. And there's some irony attached to Paul Walker's death because he starred in The Fast and the Furious, which was, a TV show about, not a TV show, but a movie series, a movie franchise about illegal street racing. And, he inevitably died in a car crash. So, when, as I mentioned in the introduction, the highest number of car crashes are during the summer months. Most number of crashes occur in the summer months. Most traffic crashes occur on clear roads, dry roads, moderate traffic conditions, and the driver is sober. And we'll talk a little bit more about fatigue, but some of these traffic crashes are inexplicable, especially single occupant crashes, single vehicle crashes where the driver just drives off the road for no apparent reason and they can't figure it out. And the driver tests negative for alcohol or drugs or those types of things. They just simply, on a clear stretch of road, they just drive off into a telephone pole or off an embankment or something like that. And these are a lot of the traffic fatalities that go on our roadways. The most common types of crashes, and next week I'm going to talk more about each one of these and how to protect yourself while driving. Head-on crashes, T-bone crashes, and these two first ones tend to often be fatal, especially if there's any speed involved. If you're on highways, at highway speeds, head-on crashes and T-bone crashes are going to be fatal in these situations. Rear-end crashes and side swipe crashes often involve injury. They're not fatal. Rear-end crashes, however, can leave you with lifetime injuries because it's soft tissue damage, it's tearing of cartilage and muscles and those types of things. So there are ways to prevent being rear-ended, especially when you're sitting at an intersection waiting for the light to change or waiting to go and those types of things. You can protect yourself. You sort of need to be on yellow alert most of the time while you're driving to avoid being involved in these different types of crashes. Interestingly enough, there are twice as many crashes that occur inside city limits as opposed to out in the country. However, the reverse is true for the number of fatalities that occur. In the countryside, in rural areas, there are twice as many fatalities as there are car crashes as opposed to what happens in the city. And the reason for that is obviously higher speeds, that people are traveling, well in excess of 50 miles an hour, 80 kilometers an hour, whereas in the city the speeds tend to be lower, but there are more people and more crashes. Most of the fatalities occur in the countryside and rural crashes, and the reasons for these is that oftentimes it's difficult to get emergency services to you and get you to the hospital, whereas if it happens in the city, you're within close proximity to getting to the hospitals. Now, obviously, some of this time and distance has been reduced with crashes that occur in the countryside. We have GPS units and satellites and those types of things, and it's a lot easier for emergency services to find you. We now have a lot more access to helicopters and high-speed vehicles, and we can get you to emergency services into the hospital a lot more quickly and whatnot. And a lot, as I mentioned just previously in the previous slide, a lot of these crashes that occur in the countryside are single vehicle crashes, people driving into telephone poles, driving off the roadway into rock embankments and those types of things. So it tends not to be as many crashes in the country, but the speeds are higher, and because the speeds are higher, the crashes tend to be fatal. Now, what are the three top reasons for crashes? The three top reasons for crashes are speeding, failing to yield, and following too close. And when we say speeding, we're not just talking about driving faster than the posted speed limit. There are other definitions of speeding. Driving faster than me. So if you're driving down the road at, say, 80 kilometers an hour and somebody passes you, they're driving faster than you. Driving faster than the traffic flow. So if the traffic flow is moving along at 100 kilometers an hour or 60 miles an hour and then somebody passes you doing 110 or 120, they're speeding. Or driving too fast for the conditions of the roadway. If it's snowy out and they're passing everybody else that's on the roadway, they're simply driving too fast for the conditions that the conditions will allow you to drive. The other one, and I would argue that failing to yield is probably the most important one. A lot of people simply fail to give way, and this is one of my favorite sayings, that it doesn't take any time out of your day to simply let your foot off the throttle and let the person go ahead of you, or just too many people on the roadway is I have the right of way and I'm going to go. Well, you can be right or you can be dead right. So a lot of people fail to yield. And finally, the last one, which I argue is the basis of defensive driving, is space management. Many people follow too close. They don't leave enough space around their vehicle, and because they don't leave enough space around their vehicle, they're going to be eventually involved in a crash. It's going to catch up with them. Now, intoxication, and as well, intoxication also includes the use of drugs. Interestingly enough, a lot of people will not know that most people who are intoxicated due to drug use, it's not illegal drugs that they're intoxicated with. Most people abuse prescription and over-the-counter medication. This is one of the most abused drugs that most drivers are using. So what happened in terms of traffic safety in the late 1960s was that traffic fatalities went off the chart. Authorities were finally pushed to do something about the number of traffic deaths that were occurring on roadways, and they implemented seatbelt laws for one thing in the late 1960s and early 1970s. And the other thing that they did was they implemented huge public advocacy campaigns against drinking and driving. And then, of course, these were spurred on in the 1980s by the creation of MAD, Mothers Against Drink Driving, which was founded by Candy Lightner, whose daughter was killed in a car crash by a drunk driver. And then, of course, other people have written books and started other organizations against this, particularly now against drinking and or against distracted driving and those types of things. Now, for new drivers, one of the reasons that new drivers are such high risk of being involved in a crash is what I call the 4Ds: drinking, driving, dating, and distracted driving. For young people who are 17, 18, 19 years old, 20 years old, these four things all come together at the same time. They're learning how to drink, they're learning how to drive, they're getting in the dating scene. They may have been in the dating scene for a while, but there tends to be a lot more drama for young people in terms of dating. And then, of course, distracted driving. We now have cell phones, we have screens, we have iPads, we have telematics inside of our vehicles. It's an incredible amount of distraction that's going on inside of vehicles for drinking, driving, dating, and distracted driving. And I would say that many young people just simply do not have enough experience with these things to be able to focus on just one of them at one time, especially when it comes to cellular phones and those types of things. I mean, they're not phones anymore. They're small computers in our pockets, and there's so many things going on and so many things that we can do with our phones that little doubt it's going to distract you. So one of the other things in the last decade or so was that authorities have brought in increased police powers for drinking and driving, especially here in the province of British Columbia in Canada. And I wondered why this had happened, but they granted police powers, they increased police powers and allowed police to issue roadside 24-hour suspensions, which was interesting here. And I always wondered why it hadn't been challenged by anyone, because the province's drink driving in Canada is charged under the federal law. It's not a charge under the provincial law. And the reason for this, just quickly trying not to get off on a tangent here on you, but essentially the reason they did this was because it was so difficult to convict for drink driving, because most drivers who were charged with drink driving got off on a technicality. So they increased police powers and allowed police to issue a 24-hour suspension, and it allows drink drivers to not continue on their way on the roadways and get off on a technicality. So this was one of the reasons that they did that. We could talk more about that in the question and answer period. There we go. Vehicle safety features. This is the other reason that we are surviving crashes more and more, is because the safety features on vehicles. Crumple zones, especially the front end of the vehicle for head-on collisions. The crumple zone absorbs the energy of the crash. And for those of you who may or may not know, when you are involved in a crash in a motor vehicle, there are three different crashes that occurs. There's the car hitting an object, there's you coming against the seatbelt or the interior of the vehicle because you're traveling at the same speed as the vehicle, and you have to come to a stop. And then the last crash is your internal organs hitting your chest cavity and coming to a stop as well. And if you're traveling at any speed, that's generally what does the most damage, is your internal organs hitting your chest cavity. If you're not restrained inside of the vehicle as well, you coming in contact with other occupants inside the vehicle or coming in contact with the dash, the steering wheel, and those types of things in the vehicle is also going to cause you severe damage and injuries and those types of things. So some of the safety features, just quickly: crumple zone, safety glass, breakaway steering columns. And the breakaway steering columns was one of the things that came out of Ralph Nader's book, Unsafe at Any Speed, because what they were finding out was that in a minor front end crash, the steering column would be pushed into the cabin of the vehicle, often catch the driver under the chin, and then it would snap their neck and they would be killed instantly in a car crash. So they had breakaway steering columns, safety restraints, and airbags. Airbags, interestingly enough, were first invented in the 1950s and then were first fitted on some of the higher end cars in the mid 1980s. So it took almost 30 years before airbags actually made their appearance in motor vehicles. Okay, one of the other advances, as I mentioned earlier, was medical advances. These have been significant in reducing traffic crashes, and most of the medical advances in understanding trauma, understanding the golden hour, getting people to emergency rooms within the first hour, came out of the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was incredibly significant in understanding how to save people's lives and have them live from severe trauma. Now, the question out of that becomes, what is the quality of life? Yes, you survived a traffic crash, but what is the quality of life that you're going to have after that crash occurs? And in the article that I wrote, Spinning Our Wheels, I just posit briefly in the article that maybe traffic crashes are more dangerous now than they were 30 or 40 years ago, because now you have to live life with these injuries, and what is the quality of life that you're going to have after that. But anyway, we can talk about all of that. So thanks very much for that. Good luck on your road test, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. We'll just go back over here and we'll answer any questions that you have. There we go. All right. So Corey is here, Bricks for Wheels. He is the moderator. Happy Easter to Gordon. Bernard, thank you so much, Bernard, for that comment. Being a licensed driver for over 15 years, but I love to watch this guy to refresh my knowledge. Awesome. Okay. Epic. For rear-end collisions, are they common on city streets that lead onto freeway ramps? Because in Manhattan Upper West Side, there is a portion of Amsterdam Ave that serves as I-95 ramp, got bumper damage. Epic, when you say you got bumper damage, did you get rear-ended? Is that what happened in terms of the bumper damage? Kingsley, planning to go for a road test. Awesome. And you're from Minnesota. Well, congratulations and good luck on your road test. You're going to do awesome. Brilliant. Okay. And Gordon. What's with the... Gordon, driving skills are also declining with the grandeur of even cheaper cars. Now these in autonomous truck industry are promoting even more senseless idleness, the vanity of modern driving. I don't know whether that's true or not, Gordon. I think what's happening is that we simply have more and more vehicles on our roadway, and because we have more and more vehicles on our roadway, the few people who are not driving according to the rules of the roadway and the culture of the roadway are more prominent, because as you get more traffic on the roadway, you're going to get more people, and unfortunately it's kind of the 80-20 rule of life, right? Are we paying attention to the 80% of life that's good, or are we paying attention to the 20% of life that's not so good? And it's the same thing with driving. 80% of the people who are on the roadways are doing the best they can. They're driving well, they're paying attention, they're driving cautiously, they're putting in defensive driving strategies. But unfortunately, what happens is that the 20% of people on the roadway who are driving arrogantly and not managing space well around their vehicles and those types of things, this is what happens is that we tend to pay attention to the 20% that's not driving well instead of the 80% that is driving well. And what happens is that that's where our focus goes, and that's where your focus goes. Then it's not gonna, that's all we're gonna see. We're not gonna see the 80% of people who are driving well. Okay, Epic, got rear-ended as our family minivan was about to enter Interstate 95 from, in the upper hand. Should that be a common rear-end scenario? Not so much, but Epic, I would really encourage you to have a look at the video on being rear-ended. Corey will get that up for you there, and that'll give you some strategies about how to prevent being rear-ended. And interestingly enough, one of the things, Epic, that will prevents you from being rear-ended is managing space in front of your vehicle, because you can always manage that space in front of your vehicle. And if you've got space in front of your vehicle and you're sitting there, and as I said, when you're driving, you should always be on yellow alert. You should always kind of be scanning around, paying attention, looking in that rearview mirror. And as you see the person coming up behind you and they're not slowing down, then you can move forward. And oftentimes when you're moving forward, if you're tapping the brake lights and the brake lights are flashing, oftentimes that's going to get the attention of the people behind you, and you get the people behind you, then they're going to slow down and they're going to stop, because obviously the person behind you doesn't want to rear end you, right? And it's the same thing. Sometimes the person behind you, for whatever reason, doesn't have a lot of experience. They're not paying attention. They were distracted by a billboard. They were distracted by somebody walking down the sidewalk. It's, you know, there are just so many things on the roads in this day and age that will distract us from the task of driving, and it only takes a moment to be distracted. Now, the other thing that we learn, and I've been thinking about this a little bit in the last little while, is veteran people as opposed to inexperienced people. And think of it like this. When you're driving down a roadway and the roadway is littered with signs, right? And we'll just, as an example, we'll take a passenger vehicle driver versus a CDL driver, somebody who's experienced like myself. When I drive down the roadway, I know that there's a certain number of road signs that I need to pay attention to. I need to pay attention to the one lane end sign. I need to pay attention to the no left turn sign when I'm trying to figure out where to go. I know that there are certain signs that I need to pay attention to. On the other hand, the passenger vehicle driver isn't going to pay attention to the same number of signs. So coming back to what I was talking about, when you're driving along a roadway, an experienced driver will know that there are certain points along the roadway that they can allow their attention to wane, you know, that they're not kind of fully paying attention to what's going on the roadway. There are other times that they know when they're driving along the roadway, for example, what Epic is talking about here in terms of on on-ramp onto a freeway. As an experienced driver, I know that when I'm trying to get onto a freeway, that I'm getting off on an on-ramp, and I have to merge over, and then I have to pay attention to my speed. I have to pick my spot on the freeway and those types of things. I know that the execution of that maneuver requires my full attention, and that I bring my full attention back to driving, because you cannot be 110% stuck into your attention of driving all the time. You just physically can't. You just emotionally you just don't have the energy to be able to do that. So what happens? So what's one of the differences between inexperienced drivers or drivers with not a lot of experience and veteran drivers is that veteran drivers know on which part of the roadway that they have to bring their full attention back to the task of driving, whereas inexperienced drivers don't have enough experience to know that, and sometimes that's why you're going to get into these rear end situations, because the driver didn't bring his or her full attention back to the task of driving. It's the same thing when you're driving down freeways, and I've actually predicting freeways, have a look at that video as well. Corey, I'll put that up for you. It's the same thing when you're driving down a freeway, right? Most of the time you can just drive down the freeway, you can kind of zone out, you can listen to the radio and whatever else is going on, but when there's an on-ramp coming onto the freeway, even if you're in the middle lane, you still need to pay attention to the traffic that's going on that on-ramp, because you may need to move over. There may be a car right beside you that's pacing right beside you, and there's another car that's trying to get on. Even though you're in the middle lane and you technically have the right of way, you could still be involved in a crash. Excuse me, because you should move over so the vehicle beside you can get over, and then the car that's merging onto the freeway can get on. Yes, the onus of responsibility is on the merging vehicle over there, but if the three of you are abreast going down the freeway, there's no place for anybody to go, and the person can't get out to merge. Yes, the person who's merging should adjust their speed, his or her speed, so that they either move into the vehicle in front of you or in behind. But again, this is the point that I'm making, that with more and more experience of driving, you're going to know when you need to bring your full attention back to the task of driving, as opposed to people who are not that experienced. They're not going to be able to know that. So there's my my big thinking on driving and why some people have traffic crashes and why other people don't. Okay, Gordon, should it be legal to turn left through a right-way road, going through to get onto the other side? I have seen a few close calls with cars making these turns. Legal to turn left through a right-way road. Okay, Gordon, I'm not quite fully understanding that. Should be legal to turn left through a right-way road. Maybe somebody can help me with that because I'm not quite understanding all the way. All right, so we got a couple of people going for road tests in the next couple of weeks here. And in terms of going for a road test, as I said in the past, and I'll say it again, there's 4 basic fundamental components for any road test anywhere in the world, regardless of class of license that you're going for, okay? Space management, speed management, observation, and communication. These are the 4 fundamental components of passing a road test, and as well for defensive driving and remaining crash free, not getting in one of the crashes that I was talking about here earlier. Space management. If you don't get near anything, it's less likely that you're going to hit something. So you want to maintain a following distance of 2 to 3 seconds in a passenger vehicle under ideal conditions. If you're driving a bigger vehicle, obviously that following distances going to have to increase. You need to stop at the right place at controlled intersections, before the stop line, before the sidewalk or crosswalk lines, and if those 2 conditions don't exist, then where the 2 roads meet. You need to stop in traffic so you can see the tires of the vehicle in front of you making clear contact with the pavement. And last one, don't block intersections for the purposes of space management. And then as well, you need 1 lane of traffic, a buffer of space between you and pedestrians, and that's if the pedestrians are going away from you. So for example, if you're making a right-hand turn, pedestrians are crossing the cross street, you need to wait 1 lane of traffic. And actually, I'm going to redo that video because I noticed in one of the driving manuals that they actually give you specific numbers, and I thought those specific numbers were actually quite good for the purposes of a road test. So that's space management. Speed management. Speed management. The posted speed limit or the flow of traffic, whichever is less. That's the speed that you need to drive for the purposes of a road test. Now, in some conditions, you can drive slower. For example, if you're in a residential area and there's parked cars on both sides of the street and it's quite narrow, then you can go slower. If you're in a high pedestrian area where there's lots of pedestrian traffic in parking malls and those types of things, then obviously you can drive a bit slower. So that's basically speed management. Pretty straightforward. Posted speed limit or the flow of traffic, whichever is less. And then you need to scan effectively. You need to observe effectively for the purposes of a road test. When you're driving straight down the road, you need to have a scanning pattern in place. You need to look as far down the road as you can. In, check your center mirror. Far down the road, both shoulders. In, check your instrument panel. And that'll help with your speed management. Far down the road, in, check your wing mirrors. And then repeat that every 8 to 12 seconds. When you're changing lanes, you need to shoulder check twice before changing lanes. And it's simply 90 degrees to the direction that you're turning. Anytime that you're turning, changing lanes, you need to shoulder check. When you're reversing for parallel parking, 2-point reverse turn, reverse stall parking, and those types of things, you need to do a 360-degree scan around your vehicle. Look out the back window while you're reversing, and approximately every vehicle length, stop the vehicle, do your 360-degree scan again, and then carry on with your backing up and doing your maneuver. Okay, that's observation. And then finally, you have to communicate, and there are 5 ways that we communicate with other traffic: lights and signals, your horn, eye contact, hand signals, hand gestures. Make sure you use all 5 fingers. Don't tell other people that they're number 1 on a road test. You won't be successful. And then finally, the position of your vehicle on the roadway is going to indicate to other road users where you're going and those types of things. So position of your vehicle. So if a vehicle is in the left-hand turning lane, it's a good chance that they're going to turn left. So those are the 4 fundamental components of any road test anywhere in the world and for any class of license: speed management, space management, observation, and communication. And that's what you need to do to be successful on a road test. All right, Augustine, do you need to hold your driver's license when you're driving? Yes, you do. Augustine, you do have to have your driver's license with you every time you're driving. You can get a fine. You can get suspended. You could also potentially get suspended. I'm not sure the charges for not having your driver's license vary depending on whether you're in the GLP program, the Graduated Licensing Program, which means you're a new driver, or you're a veteran driver. Some police might be kind of nice to you and let you go get your driver's license. but you should have it on you at all times. And if you borrow somebody else's vehicle as well, make sure that the insurance papers and registration are in the vehicle as well before you take off, so that you have access to all of that information in the unlikely event that you do get pulled over. Okay? Gordon, basically, if you're turning onto the side of a road where traffic is going right or left to get onto the other direction of traffic. Okay, Gordon, you're gonna have to send me an address for a map, because I'm sorry, I simply don't understand what you're talking about there. Okay, just doesn't. It's not. I'm not being able to get a picture of what you're asking me. Jaden, hey Rick, I asked one of the DMV employees, and they are correct. If I get my driver's license, I can't drive home. They completely agree with you. Yes. So what Jaden is saying there is that one of the hard and fast rules that I have about being a driving instructor, and this is for any other driving instructor that might be watching this, you do, after a person passes a road test, you don't let them drive home. There's just too much going on. They're too excited. They just passed the road test. Do not let them drive home. And I'll tell you a funny story about this. Is that this was kind of my hard and fast rule for a long time. And I was working. They sent me out to take this guy out for a road test. He was at the fire department. He was using the fire truck. And I thought, oh, I better not drive the fire truck. I better let him do that. So we were at the test center, passed his road test. We drove home. He stopped at his girlfriend's because he was all excited. He wanted to, and it was on the way, so it wasn't a big deal. So he went in, told his girlfriend. We went back to the fire station. We drive around the fire station. He pulls up in front of the door and puts it in reverse, and then he proceeds to back into the door at the fire station. And yes, he did damage to the door. And then after he backed into the door, he pulled forward, and then he hit the garage door opener and backed the truck into the garage. So they just reinforced my rule that you do not let students drive home after they have passed a road test. So yes. All right. Carson, I have crashed my car while I had my permit. I think I have a car trauma, and I'm nervous I'm going to fail my road test tomorrow. No, Carson, you're not going to fail your road test tomorrow. Positive visualization. Visualize yourself passing your road test. And I see Corey's put up the video here, a couple of videos for you on passing a mock road test. This will give you all of the information and what to expect on your road test as well. 9 tips to reduce fear and anxiety. And again, say to yourself, I can do this. I am a good driver. I'm going to pass, okay? And put all these tips in place. The one other one that you might want to have a look at, there's some information in there, is 10 tips to pass your road test. 10 top tips there, and Corey will get that up for you as well. Jaden, by the way, I rode a new Tigris at Busch Gardens, but at the end of the ride I busted a hip. Sounds like it. Sorry to hear that, Jaden. Okay, awesome. Okay, so I just want to go back to Gordon's comment here about traffic skills declining. I don't think that traffic skills are declining. And I would argue that what has declined is people's exposure to driving. A lot of people coming to the task of driving when they are eligible to get their license now have never driven before. There are a lot of people even that have not even ridden bicycles because they live in large metropolitan areas. They haven't ridden a bicycle. They haven't driven. And when they come driving, they're absolutely brand new and have had no experience with driving. Whereas when I grew up, and a lot of other people that I know of my age group grew up on farms, we drove tractors, we drove the lawnmower and those types of things. And, for those of you watching on the replay, for those of you watching here on the live stream, maybe you can correct me on this or tell me, tell the smart drivers what kind of driving experience you had before you started driving, before you started working towards getting your license. Did you ride a bicycle? Did you drive mom and dad's car on back gravel roads? Did you drive farm equipment? Did you drive construction equipment? Did your dad have a construction equipment and you drove, the dozers and those types of things? Because before I came to the task of driving, I had a mini bike that I drove back and forth to work on the gravel roads. I drove tractors on the farm. I drove old trucks on the farm. I learned to drive standard, I think, when I was 13 or 14 years old, because we had one on our farm that we drove around in the field. I drove snowmobiles in the wintertime. I drove dirt bikes and those types of things. So before I actually came to the task, to learning how to drive, to going and getting my license, I'd already had heaps and heaps of experience about driving vehicles without a license. So I think what's happening with what Gordon is saying is that it's not that driving skills are declining. I would argue that people don't have the same amount of experience that they did 20 or 30 years ago when most people grew up on farms, and they had all kinds of driving experience, riding bikes and motorbikes and old trucks and those types of things before they even went to get their license. So I don't think that driving skills are declining. I'm thinking that people are starting farther and farther back than what they were 20, 30 years ago. So just, if you're, like I said, watching on the replay, you're watching now, just let me know what your experience is in terms of when you came to get your driver's license. Did you already have a whole host of driving experience, or did you come to it completely new, completely fresh, never been in a vehicle before? Okay, Jaden, by the way, I wrote, okay, we said that one. Say if there are 2 lanes of traffic, you need to go through the lane you are not turning onto, like coming out of a gas station. Oh, okay, so I know what you're saying now, Gordon. So you come out of a gas station, the gas station is on the corner of the intersection, and you want to turn left. Most of the time, if traffic's busy, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to make a left-hand turn because you can't make the left-hand turn from the right-hand lane. You got to get over into the left turning lane. So no, you shouldn't be able to do that. And if people are trying to do that and force their way over, then those people, I'm sure we all have some choice words for those people who are trying to force their way through traffic. Now, on the other hand, there are going to be some people who are just going to let these people in. I mean, I know if I was coming up and I saw the person there trying to get over, I would simply leave enough space and just let them go. It depends on the situation, depends on who's in the vehicles and what cars are there and those types of things. But yeah, that's basically my take on it. Tommy, I learned from this channel accidents are also caused due to drivers making unexpected moves. I had a car pull in front of me at an intersection while I had the green light. And yes, and that is an excellent example, Tommy, about what you're talking about there. People making unpredictable moves on the roadway. And this goes back to what Gordon here is talking about, people pulling out of a fuel station at the corner of an intersection and then trying to get over into the left-hand lane so they can turn left. That's an unpredictable action, and sometimes that's going to result in a traffic crash. And people are going to be involved in traffic crashes and being unpredictable. And one of my favorite questions in terms of driver training is I say to students, what does a green light mean? And students will inevitably say to me, it means I can go. Well, that's not the right answer. It's the right answer, but it's not the best answer. The best answer is you can proceed if the way is clear. And this goes back to what Tommy's saying here, that we expect the intersection to be clear when the light is green, but don't rely on that, right? So inexperienced drivers, novice drivers with not a lot of experience are going to go through the intersection. Now, I got a green light. I got the good to go. But veteran drivers, experienced drivers who've had some sort of incident, and now that Tommy's had this experience, you're going to be going through the intersection. You're going to be scanning the intersection, looking at the intersection to make sure the intersection's clear before you enter that intersection. And that's one of the things that you need to do for defensive driving, managing space, knowing that the way is clear and it's clear for you to proceed. And most of the time, 99.9% of the time, the intersection will indeed, yes, be clear because the light is green and it's good for you to go. But you still need to check, okay? Because there are other people who are going to be unpredictable. So just keep that in mind, all right? Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Tommy. Luckily, the person turned their car to the point where I hit them from behind. Bummer. Okay, Marcia, hey Rick, thanks for your videos. I passed my road test last week, Wednesday, after failing 6 times. Excellent. That is some serious tenacity. Congratulations, Marcia. That is just really brilliant that you finally passed your road test. And we're so glad that we could help out. And Corey will put the link up there for you if you haven't done so already. If you could sign up for the 100K program, that would be tremendously awesome. And just let us know that you were successful on your 7th attempt there. Brilliant. Corey, merging 2 lanes over instead of one at a time out of a yield scenario. Yes, excellent. Okay. GLaDOS, hello, hi there, welcome to the live stream. Jaden, and when me and my mom are on the freeway last night, we saw an unmarked Charger, Dodge Charger, not see what police state, was not even in. Okay. Gordon, a lot of drivers think they are giving courtesy as opposed to the process of signaling. Okay, Carson, should I back into the parking spot when I show up at the test, and how do I line up my wheels inside the lines? Okay, Carson, most of the time, yes. I have heard of some licensing centers that they do have signs that they don't want you to back into the spot. But for the most part, if there aren't any signs, then yes, reverse into the spot. And Corey will put the video up for you on reverse stall parking, and that will help you out to learn how to back up. The other thing, Carson, I will give you just as a tip, most of the time when you're in a parking lot and the lines are there for the parking lot, if you look in front and there's cars parked in front, those parking spots will line up with the ones behind you. So if you look out the windshield and line yourself and the vehicle up with the parking space in front of you, oftentimes that will allow you to back straight into the space that you're in. The other piece that I advocate for students is that when you're backing into a parking space, look at the park beside another vehicle. It's a lot easier to line yourself up off another vehicle than it is to try and line your vehicle up with the car. Now, if you have a modern vehicle, and some of the smart drivers here on the live stream, some of the smart drivers watching on the replay will have the newer vehicles, because I know myself, a couple of years ago, I rented a Nissan, their SUV, and when you put it into reverse, the mirrors would tilt down so that you could see the lines on the pavement. So those will help you out as well if it does that automatically. If it doesn't do it automatically, then don't do it. But what I advocate is parking beside another car, and that just makes it a lot easier. AJ, I agree, riding my bike has given me awareness skills when driving and looking far ahead to see hazards. And yes, I agree with you, AJ. I've ridden my bicycle a lot, and it really helps you out on the road test. Gordon, I told my brother before his road test, you might watch in front of you, not just the green light. Yes, that's an excellent piece of wisdom you imparted to your brother there, Gordon. Excellent. The show, I got my end next Wednesday at ICBC in Vancouver Island. Should I drive down where the test is for a week? Okay, so the show, you're not on Vancouver Island, but you're going down to Vancouver Island. Are you doing it in Victoria, or are you doing it somewhere else on Vancouver Island there for your road test? Tommy, I was not charged by the police, my accident, but I decided to look into my defensive driving, hence why I'm here. And excellent. And the other thing that I'll put up here, Tommy, that you might consider, and all of those watching here on the replay, you can pick up the defensive driving course over at the Smart Drive Test website for $17, okay? So $17, that's the price of the course over there, and it will go through step by step the 4 different kinds of crashes. It'll go through different driving in adverse weather conditions and those types of things, but it is over there. You can have a look at it. You can get all of the information. If you're interested, I can go over the different components of that course. I think it'll take you about 3 or 4 hours to complete the course. It's a completely self-paced online course, and good course, excellent course, and will give you all the skills and information. And also, I did driver training last winter for the Highway Through Hell movie crew, for those of you who've seen the movie Highway Through Hell, and they also gave me an endorsement to put up there on the website, and they were able to survive through the winter running the Coquihalla Highway, and remain crash free with the help of my winter driving and defensive driving course. So have a look at that as well. And Corey's put the link up there for the defensive driving course. So definitely consider that, and that will give you all the skills and give you a lot of good information, tips, and techniques that you can put in place that will help you to remain crash free. All right. Okay, the show. Okay, so there, Marcia, Corey put up the link for the 100K campaign. There's the video for the reverse stall park. The show. Also, can I use a backup camera during my test? How do I have to turn off the screen when doing the test? The show, you don't have to do that, but definitely have a look out the back window while you're backing up. Okay, you can kind of glance at the backup camera, but do not use it as your primary source of observation for backing up. You have to look out the back window, okay? The show, I live on Vancouver Island. I mean, I should practice the road test route for a week. Oh, yes. And the other thing, show, if you haven't taken driving lessons, the other thing I would suggest you do is get in contact with one of the driving schools down there. Steve, can't think of his last name right now. He writes the newspaper article. And then there's DriveWise. There's a couple other driving schools. Just get them to do a mock road test for you, and that'll help you out. Okay, Brandon, I failed my driving test because I wasn't decisive enough. How do I overcome this? Brandon, one of the ways that you overcome that is through practice. And the other thing that I would suggest you do is look at the video on Learn to Drive, and Corey will put that up for you. And because basically what I think they're trying to say to you in terms of you just don't have enough mastery over the primary controls. So the primary control is the brake, the steering wheel, and the throttle. And if you can strengthen your fundamental skills with the primary controls by doing the exercises in the Learn to Drive video, that will improve your overall driving. And if you can improve your fundamental slow speed maneuver skills, that's going to improve your overall driving and make you more decisive when you're driving, and then you're going to be successful on your road test. Excuse me. All right, so there's the link. Okay, lots of people questions. Here we go. Sebastian, hello Sebastian. AJ, just 6 manual driving in 6 lessons. AJ, what did you say? Where'd you go? Do you think $250 is too much for 6 stick shift driving lessons? My manual driving lesson courses should be in a course. Oh my God, $250. Okay, AJ, Corey will put up the video series for you on manual transmission and how to learn how to drive a manual transmission. I would suggest you have a look at that, and then you can decide whether you want to spend the $250 or not. Sebastian, how much study do you think is necessary to be ready for a CDL license? Had my license for just 18 months now. Okay, CDL license, Sebastian, are you talking about a tractor trailer unit, or are you talking for a bus or a straight truck? Just let me know there. Gordon, last year I was fined $100 for making a turn that you cannot make after a certain time. The turn was perfect, yet I still got a ticket. I found that a little overbearing. Yes, Gordon, unfortunately you made a turn contrary to a sign. That's the technical offense. And essentially there was a sign over the intersection, and it doesn't allow you to make a turn at certain times. And we have those here in Vernon. They're in most cities. And essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to reduce congestion by preventing people making turns. Because when people make turns at intersections, it causes the traffic to slow down. Now, I can't comment on whether the officer was being overbearing or whatnot. There's just too many variables that go into that for me to comment on it. But yes, sometimes they're going to let you off, sometimes they're not. It depends on who you get pulled over by. I have heard stories that police officers who work just traffic, they're going to be a bit overbearing. So that may or may not have been what had happened for you. Hatteray, I know this guy who can make me pass my license. You are the best. Thank you so much for that. That's excellent. Jaden, I completely forgot. Where'd you go? The new Tigris is actually powered by Magnus, and yes, I'm not making this up. And Belinda, hello Belinda from Toronto. Welcome to the live stream. Adika, hey Rick, what is the school zone speed here in Kelowna if the speed limit is not posted down below the sign? Okay, Adika, Indika, I'm sorry, I wasn't saying that correctly. Corey will put up the video on school signs for you, and if there isn't a speed sign under it, it's probably not a school zone. And you're well within your mandate to be confused about school signs, because there's about 5 different goofy school signs, so they can be a bit confusing. But Corey will put that up for you, and that'll help you out, okay? Belinda, this Saturday I drove to Hamilton. Second time I calmed myself, and it turned out well, though exciting. The wrong exit. But I did good on the way back. 3-month-old driver. That is awesome. Congratulations, Belinda, and thank you for sharing that success story with us. And just one tip that I'll give you, Belinda, in terms of finding the correct exit. The next time you go and do that, or you're driving on the freeways, the 401 and the 403 and those types of freeways down there where you're at, just have a quick look at Google to your destination where you're going to go, and pick up the mile marker number And when you pick up the mile marker number, when you're driving down the interstate, and say, for example, that you're going to mile marker 380, which is the exit number, right? 380, and you're driving down and you get to 375, well, you know that your exit is 5 kilometers down the road. Once you get to 379, you know it's a kilometer down the road and you're going to get off the next exit, and that will really help you out with your navigation. Okay? GLaDOS, you know how many buses have rear steering axles? Those make the buses push out on other lanes. How can you avoid an accident like that? I almost got creamed by a bus doing a left turn. What I would suggest you, GLaDOS, is larger vehicles, give them plenty of space, okay? Lots and lots of space. Just stay away from them, okay? Because as you said, they have wide swings, so you want to stay away from them. Bigger vehicles, lots of space. And basically the rule of thumb is that when you're behind the vehicle, if you can't see the driver in the mirrors, the driver in the mirrors can't see you. So that's one of the rules of thumb that you want to keep in place. Okay, so Sebastian, you're going to be doing a bus. Basically for a bus, it's about 2 weeks of driver training, Sebastian. It's not very long. It's pretty straightforward. You're just learning about, you know, how to do the pre-trip inspection, how to drive the vehicle down the road, and how to reverse the bus. And that's basically what you're going to do for a bus, and it won't take you that long. Changja, why did you decide to become a driving instructor? Changja, the reason I became a driving instructor was to try and get off the road, because in the 1990s I was driving truck long haul, so I was running from Canada into the United States. I was gone for, you know, weeks at a time, and I just didn't have a life, and it was one of the ways that I saw myself sort of as, you know, bridging the transition to get off the road. And actually, I mean, you know, now it's worked out, but I mean, at the time it was a pretty tough go, and it wasn't a smooth transition. It took me a pretty long time because, interestingly enough, in the province of Ontario, they certify you to teach people how to drive a tractor-trailer unit and how to pass air brakes and whatnot. But it's kind of an unwritten rule in the industry that nobody really tells you that you need to go and get your car instructor's license, because in the province of Ontario, you're actually licensed to be a car instructor license. But if you want to do everything else, buses and trucks and whatnot, you have to have that fundamental license. So that's what happened. That's why I went to get my license, because I was trying to come off the road and try and make the transition away from being an over-the-road truck driver. So that's why I became a driving license instructor. Now, and that just continued on, because then I started, you know, getting all of these questions about traffic crashes and whatnot, and how to avoid traffic crashes. And then I got, and if you go and look at my biography, and Corey will put up the link for you about my autobiography, where I was having an argument with another truck driver about the speed on the 401 highway in Ontario, and I was saying that the speed limit was 120 kilometers an hour, and he was saying it was 100 kilometers an hour, and the posted speed limit was 100 kilometers an hour, but I was arguing that if you do anything less than 120 kilometers an hour, you're not going to get a speeding ticket. And we had a pretty intense conversation about that, and then I realized, you know, I kind of asked myself the question, you know, why do people obey traffic laws? Is it because they respect traffic laws, or because they fear traffic laws? And that was really the really deep question that I went back to university and just kept, you know, doing traffic and policing. So, you know, and here I am today with a YouTube channel doing quite well with all of this information and knowledge. So thanks. Okay. Gordon, Hamilton is nightmarishly busy. Yes, it is. Ounce, you helped me get my driver's license. Thank you, sir. You are so much appreciated, and you are incredibly welcome. We're so glad that we could help you out. Thanks for letting us know, Ounce. And again, if you could go over and sign up for the 100K program, that'd be great. Okay. Gordon, veteran complaints about the contemporary trucking industry can cite that there are numerous unskilled truckers. Can you attest to that? Yes, and I can, Gordon. And again, you know, this is a long conversation. This is a long conversation about the truck driving training industry in the United States and Canada. They do have something to answer for. There's no doubt about it. The training is not up to the standard that it should be, particularly with the amount of rules and regulations and compliance that are required by new truck drivers, and the amount of skill that's needed to be able to drive a tractor-trailer unit, particularly in urban areas. And we can have a longer discussion about this another time, but we're getting near the end of the hour here, so we're just going to wrap up. So again, for all of those of you watching on the live stream, thank you very much. For those of you watching on the replay, consider subscribing, consider hit that like button. And if you passed a road test in the last couple of weeks, congratulations on that. And if you got a road test coming up in the next week or so, good luck on that. And be sure to head over to the Smart Drive Test website and pick up the defensive driving course for $17. As I said, it's got all of the tips, techniques, and strategies and knowledge that you need to keep yourself safe on the roadway. So thanks again for all your questions. Thanks again for all of your contributions. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. Bye now.